Remember my voice. I do trailers. All kinds of trailers.
73, take 2.
One day they'll put me in a film, a proper full-length job. Until then, I'm just stuck with this sort of stuff. Go and see this. Don't miss that. The most terrifying thing you ever saw is coming to babysit for you tonight.
All right, cut it there. Look, just read what's on the script, will you?
What?
The script. Other way up.
Ready?
Yes, yes.
You flock to see brief encounters for the special...
Close.
Close encounters.
Close Encounters, the film.
Oh, I never saw it.
Well, forget that film. We're on about our film. Time Bandits.
What?
Time Bandits, the one you are supposed to be promoting. Remember?
You flock to see Close Encounters for the special effects. You went to Superman to see a man fly. You went to Star Wars for the droids. You went...
Now what?
What's page 2, man?
It's under page 1. See? Oh, dear.
You went to Star Wars. Time Bandits can offer you much, much more. It's not the special effects, or flying men, or droids, which makes Time Bandits a unique cinematic...
Cinematic! You know, pertaining to the cinema.
Cinematic experience, it's the makeup. Yes, folks, you've never seen anything like it. Men made up to look like monsters. Monsters made up to look like men. Look-alike men made up to look different. Different men made up to look alike. No expense has been spared on the pan stick. No expense has been spared flying in the world's greatest makeup man.
Just a minute. What about the plot?
The what?
The plot. What the film is about.
Well, I haven't seen it, have I?
Haven't seen it? You're sitting there telling millions of people to go and see a film you haven't even seen?
Well, I can't see every film I do now, can I?
Oh, wonderful. Terrific. Look, give me that.
What are you doing?
Taking over. You're out. O-U-T. Finished. Kaput. Finito.
What about the trailer?
I'll do it. Time Bandits is an awfully good film. We have worked ever so hard on it. It's a tremendous adventure story. We like it, and we're pretty sure you will. What's wrong with it? It's direct, punchy, honest.
Honest. Honest. Modest. What's that got to do with it?
That's how you do it.
There you go.
Marvelous. Absolutely marvelous. That's a good treatment.
It had everything. It had a plot going on in the background that had nothing to do with the movie itself. it was like a play, kind of, you know what I mean? It had the trailer guy that we were talking about Never Ending Story. That's like, in a world. That guy told his whole backstory. I learned a lot. Don't know what the movie was about based on that trailer, but I learned a lot.
But then again, I watched the movie multiple times and I still have no idea what it's about. So
I watched it twice today and I love this movie so much.
Oh, it's great. But as far as like what it's about, I mean, yeah, we'll get into it. We'll get into all that and more. It's movie night.
All right. Well, this is movie night extravaganza. Should have started probably with that. I'm Forrest Miller, your host, joined by J. Andrew, 6'0" world illustrator, Ben Burgess, designer, bad takes haver. How's it going?
Pretty good. I had fun last night making really raunchy Zizek jokes at the post game.
Sounds like a good time.
Yes.
All right. Also joined by Protonic Reversal and Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends frontman Conan Neutron, coming to you live from a different spot. Coming to you live from the Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal void.
That's right. The void which I do my show in, yes, which is different than the void I do this show in. In fact, I'm actively dematerializing right now for those that are watching.
This show like literally is a void, I think.
It's a void where all my free time goes. So.
And also joined by Amy Bell and Amanda Feriante from These Are Bad Movies, different from Bad Takes. Everybody has different opinions on bad movies. You guys do good movies and explain why they're bad. Andy does bad movies and explains why they're good. I don't know how you guys haven't fought yet, but
I don't know. But they came on this past week and had a great time.
Oh yeah, it was wonderful. I think it's because there's just so much content that no one can do it on their own.
It's very true.
You know, that we just have so much to cover that it's good to have like a comrade in arms in the taking down of the movies.
It really is sort of like a partnership separated by 2 podcasts in distance.
Yes. and I'm also glad,
but not in terms of a love for the thing that you're doing, of course.
And I'm also glad we're here to talk about a movie that doesn't open with a colonoscopy bag being peed into by Glenn Close.
By Alan Dershowitz. So I want to start with this clip. It's literally just everybody involved in the movie shit talking each other, and including George Harrison, who apparently funded the movie, which is something and funded a bunch of their movies, which is interesting.
That was the first thing I learned about the movie before ever watching it.
Well, nobody told me. They just said watch Time Bandits. It's a movie and it's on the schedule.
was that the lead up?
Yeah.
It is in fact both a movie and also on the schedule.
Known for making films cheaply. Towards the end of Time Bandits, that's when things got a bit tougher because there were certain things that Dennis wanted cutting out, and I wasn't about to cut them out. Particularly, tasty things like eating rats and things like that, which you've got to do in a film of that sort. He's very squeamish about things, and these are the things that made a scene interesting.
What, anybody? Might be the last meal yet?
It wasn't a horrific thing. It was very funny. And we had a lot of arguments at the end. I think that was the beginning of the end of the relationship. I just think I would prefer him to stay doing what he does extremely well and let those other people deal with the other things.
I think that would be a very silly thing for us to do. Because if we're going to be crazy, then we have to develop some safeguards, and we also have to develop a very keen interest in what we do.
We tried to get into situations where we could sort of edit the screenplay rather than shoot all the screenplay and then edit the film and chuck maybe £500,000 worth of footage on the floor. And we had a few rows with Terry, but very small compared to the trouble he's had with recent films.
Oh, Terry Gilliam falls out with almost everyone he's ever met and doesn't speak to them for 3 years. This is part of Terry's life. It's sort of a deep pattern, which I think it would take him many years to cure.
Terry Gilliam's never satisfied with anything. He's just made a $45 million film and he's still complaining. Didn't have enough money. He's just a silly old bitch. I mean, he's very sweet. I took him out to dinner last night. I paid, of course. American git.
At the end of the film, I'm a crazed person, and the film is my child, and I'm this mother badger, and everybody is a threat to it. And there was a point where I threatened to burn the negative. I had reached the breaking point, and I said, if you're going to insist on those cuts, I'm destroying the whole thing. I made it. I can destroy it. Goodbye.
Benson.
I'm a reasonable man.
That poor motherfucker got turned into a dog and then got blown up on his day off.
Yeah. He just wanted to get blown up. He kept begging to get blown up. He just wanted to get blown up. He got turned into a dog and then blown up.
Yep. Not what I asked for.
It'd be funny if he discovered actually I kind of like this. I hope he doesn't blow me up and then gets blown up.
I think being a dog actually, yeah.
But no, I think it's really funny that Eric Idle's in that clip and then wasn't even in Time Bandits. There's no like.
Well, just because he's part of the gang, man. It's Monty Python gang.
Yeah. But it's just funny, like that he pops up in that to be like, he's a silly old bitch.
Right. Well, that makes it all the better because, of course, they clearly take the promotional vehicle of that not seriously in any way, shape, or form, and know that their brand is complete and utter nonsense. So it works.
Yeah. I don't know. It's pretty funny.
I feel like it's group aspirations, Forrest. It really is. I mean, I feel like we're almost reaching it, like fighting behind Arby's, imaginary fights behind Arby's, like, you know, making appearances at random times to be like, yeah, Forrest is just a silly little bitch, and like,
But also
we can do this.
But also paying for each other's dinner at Arby's.
Exactly. Yeah. Like,
Gotta get that roast beef.
And nonsense.
I'll be missing a few teeth and still be like, you know what? I'll pay for everybody's dinner. I lost this one. I'll pay for everybody's dinner. Oh, you all forgot your wallets? Well, fuck you guys.
Yeah. I totally. Okay, we get it. You forgot your wallet. You forgot your wallet, right? You know.
And I forgot a few teeth. All right. Well, whatever.
Well, that's where the shit talk comes in the promotion. You can complain about, none of these people pay for their own dinner.
Yeah. No, and Monty Python's always been amazing at that. Like Monty Python's always been amazing at like doing like almost like a fake documentary style where they kind of turn all of that into promotion. And you never know where the promotion ends and like where the actual like, you know, because it seems like there was like a legitimate story with Terry Gilliam threatening to burn the negative, I think actually happened. And also, you know, breaking ties with Dennis, Dennis seems like the silly old bitch. He seems boring as fuck. Like, fuck Dennis. But then it seems like George Harrison and I think Dennis was like the executive producer, and George Harrison, nobody would fund Time Bandits getting made. And they wanted to make something else. And George Harrison came in at the last minute and was like, you know what? I'll fund this. Just like I funded, you know, your other movies that you made. And he's like, we just have to get some money back for this. And then they kind of drained his fucking contributions.
He mortgaged his house.
I wonder if he characterized it that same way you just said it. You know, just like I funded all the rest of the things you guys have done. You know, just sort of like whatever. You know,
whatever. I'm one of the Beatles.
Yeah, it's. I wrote many timeless songs.
He really liked their movies.
He did enough for Monty Python that he's almost like an honorary member.
Yeah.
And I mean, if I were George Harrison, like, that just bolsters my legacy, right? Like, I mean,
the problem is that George Harrison can't have beef with anyone because he's a vegetarian.
True. But you know what though? After '89, he totally could have joined Monty Python because it wasn't doing anything, and they were short a member after '89.
Yep, there we go, folks. All right. So anyway,
speaking of Time Bandits.
Yeah. Were we? I think we were. I feel like we were at one point.
Time Bandits are how many hours the show has stolen from my life. And I know all of you guys.
Oh,
damn, dog. Like that, huh?
No, so we can take this conversation a million directions. I think that this movie kind of feels almost like it's almost like leftover like Monty Python ideas, like which I guess they came up with like new ideas, but it kind of feels like it's just like skit after skit, and they kind of tied them together through the portals. Like they're going through the portals the entire time. And
it's a great conceit to have different bits, you know, in historical eras, right? Why not?
Yeah. So I have a few clips from a conversation with Michael Palin and Terry Gilliam, who wrote this together. And although Terry Gilliam seems to get all the credit, so starting with this one, I think.
Well, Michael Palin's just too nice to say anything bad about
it. Yeah, he's the one person that didn't show up in that.
He's the nice one. He's not going to say bad stuff about Terry Gilliam.
I think I have to take credit for the initial idea of running through time and space and committing crimes and able to then escape with the loot of your crime before the crime was committed. That's where it started.
No, it was absolutely. I mean, you'd written a couple of sides of paper which you appeared one day in my kitchen. I remember that, and said, "This is the next thing. Look, I've just This is the basic idea. And it was really pretty much all there, including, I think, Time Bandits, the name, which you always felt was only going to be a working title. And probably have to change it eventually. But I remember you bringing it around. I remember seeing that. And that basically was the whole idea of two sides of foolscap.
And the idea, I think, was, again, trying to do a film from a child's point of view, but thinking a kid couldn't sustain it. So let's surround him with a gang of equal-heighted people, which became the little guys who were the Time Bandits. And I think the original idea was still in there, that they had been working for God and got bored and frustrated because, going out and robbing banks and things was much more exciting than creating the universe.
Yeah.
But
there's a lot of characters there, basically. And then it was the idea of going back through history and sort of, I'm not sure how that happened, just who we'd use, I think that
didn't we sit down and actually come up with a series of historical
really
characters,
interesting characters that everybody would know, and also that there had to be different periods of history so they wouldn't clash and they look very different. So there was there's ancient Greece, and there was the sort of Napoleonic Wars, which you like very much because a lot of battle stuff and bodies throwing themselves around.
All that stuff. Yeah. But I still
particularly
think
that period, was it you said it's got to be that period?
I think Napoleon was clear because it was he was about power adventure, and to rob Napoleon seemed a good thing. But I think again, your skill was to know all the short people in history, all the powerful short people, which is an incredible source of knowledge that most of us don't have.
I don't know whether I knew that Napoleon was short, but it was a hell of a bonus.
Tamerlane and all of them, this list that went on and on.
I sort of made that up, I think.
Oh,
I'm not sure that's totally historically accurate, but Napoleon was very squat, and actually I did quite like the idea that some of the most powerful people in history were short and angry at being short, therefore very dynamic. So they had it in for people who are tall, languid, and of a normal height who had a fairly comfortable life. And so that's what gave them the energy and the obsession to get back at the people who were big and tall. That was.
But I still think a great moment to rob him and then end up in the Middle Ages where there's Robin Hood who then takes all their wealth. So it was this constant thing of them failing, which is what was important. And it was also a sense of a kid with all of his heroes, and we're deflating them as we go through the whole movie. Whether it's Napoleon, Robin Hood, we're just pulling the rug out from underneath their feet, and the kid.
Indeed.
I like that they were talking about the height thing because
it's your name, because it's the name that you picked on your.
Well, not just that. Years ago, I was at a convention and I was doing prop troll work for the performances, and they told me to set the microphone up low because the next guest was short. They didn't tell me it was Kenny Baker. The guy, the dwarf they shoved into R2D2. Who's also in this movie.
Yeah, who's also.
And he comes out and he looks up and he tries to reach up with his little arms and he couldn't reach the microphone because I didn't put it down low enough because I didn't realize they just said he's short.
When they say he's short, you assume 5 foot something.
I was thinking Amy height.
Hey.
And so out walks what's his name? The seventh Doctor.
Seventh Doctor.
Sylvester McCoy. Yeah. Sylvester McCoy walks out and he's like, "Did you see the guy who set up the microphone? I did. He's awfully tall, isn't he?" And they're just sitting there making fun of my height.
Fantastic.
That's cute, actually.
And then he takes the microphone and he holds it by the cord and drops it right to the floor. And Kenny Baker looks down and goes, "I'm not that short. You did, all right?"
Oh,
I was waiting for that.
Hit the point. No, I really like because Napoleon complex is obviously the term, for the historical term for the psychological condition that comes with someone like Napoleon who is short and is just kind of trying to take it out on everybody. Which who knows if that was had any kind of motivating factor in Napoleon's actual decisions, but to have him be that obsessed with height is it's a very Python-esque turn, I'd say.
And he's the tall one in this film.
Yeah.
Comparatively. One of the reasons he likes their performance so much, which is almost objectively terrible. But then if you think about the fact that nobody would have heard Me and My Shadow in Napoleonic times.
Yeah.
Right? So, oh, what a delightful song they apparently wrote themselves. Choreography could use a little work, but
also when he's sitting there, laughing,
hitting each other.
When he's sitting there laughing at the puppets, and the puppets are the most entertaining thing in the world because the puppets are smaller than him, and watching smaller beings do damage to each other, even though they're not real people, they're literally puppets, is like a really hilarious turn for that to take.
Likes it.
Yeah, and then of course the dwarves can't really do anything without at least one of them punching the other one in the face. Yeah. So that bloodlust takes over. I don't know. I think that whole sequence was hilarious. Like it was a good first time Bandit heist. And just the idea of robbing Napoleon too is amazing.
Oh, they even take his hand.
Yeah, exactly. Well, why wouldn't you?
I would totally take Napoleon's hand if I had the chance.
Well, and that's what I like about the narrative is whether or not this is really happening or it's just the Kevin's dream. It makes sense that this little history nerd has a good grasp of some of the stuff from these different time periods, but is just sort of rolling along and making it up as he goes.
Yeah, as kids do. I mean,
and that's what I loved about it is that by the time you get to the what was it called, the Dark Castle, or what was it, the
where the evil lives,
Dark Fortress, I think is what it was. It's made of Legos.
Yeah,
so,
and there's a giant Lego. There's even a giant Lego in the middle of the room. Like
yeah. You're not, and like he turns into a pin cushion and a carousel, and like it's just very. By the time you get there, it's clear that this is like someone sitting there like playing with their dolls, and like there's a big doll, and that's why there's a ship on its head, and it's really. I loved it as a kid. I was a history nerd as a kid. I got a degree in history. I love history. I loved it as a kid, but I hadn't seen it in years and years. And I watched it today, and I love it even more as an adult. I watched it a second time. Like when my kid got home from school, I was like, no, you're watching this too. You have to see this, child. It is for the children.
And I think that there's a certain kind of, I was thinking about this in the beginning of the movie. Where the parents are just sitting there obsessed with their like appliances, and that's all they can fucking talk about the entire time. And to be in Britain, like to be anywhere kind of in the UK, which is the spot of kind of a dying empire that kind of historically has had all of these like romantic traditions, and things actually happen there that involve like real like heroic historical figures. When you're sitting there at the kind of the zenith or like the end point of an empire that's literally had the life drained out of it by the last century, to the point where it really is that people can just sit there and they're like, wearing whatever clothes, like middle-class people in like a house, not making enough fucking money, just sitting there talking about appliances. And that's all they have to talk about. They're watching TV and they have the, your money or your life, like that whole sequence. Yeah. So to kind of, as a kid, right, at the end of this empire, to kind of be imagining Napoleon and, wars of conquest between knights, and not really know the details of it per se, but like kind of know that, throughout history on this continent, in this country, all throughout kind of Europe, like these heroic battles were taking place that have just been reduced because, the UK was like the biggest, or the British Empire was the biggest empire really until America came and just kind of swiped that title from it. You know what I mean? At the end of World War II, like to be sitting there at the end of that and just be imagining like knights running through, and even like the time bandits themselves as these like, 7 dwarfs type characters. I mean, there's 6 of them, and then there's one that was evil, which you're supposed to, I guess, know because there's one dwarf that's next to evil. But just to be in that state, and the world's been so drained of all of these heroic narratives. The world's been drained of all of this mythical, like, this mythical imperial conquest, and you're just sitting there being like, well, I wish I was part of that age or this age or any age besides the one where my parents are just babbling about fucking microwaves in the front room and telling me to go to bed. That's not like a real life. This is what things used to be like. So that
and the way that conversation, like what I thought was brilliant about that is that he wrote it in a way, they wrote it, I guess they both wrote it together, wrote it in a way that you could believe it being written by a child, because it's almost like they sat there and went, what's something grown-ups talk about? I don't know, microwaves, you know? And then when they have like lovers on the road, they're like, oh, what about this thing that no one understands? You know, like they kind of
literal hemming and hawing.
Yeah. And just really kind of over the top gushiness. And they're saying things that are alluding to something that even the adults don't understand because it doesn't make sense. It's got this like perspective of a kid watching not sex, but you know, sexual tension and not understanding what it is they're seeing and like making up words to go with it. And it's just beautifully done.
And there's also this disappointment, I'd say, right, that goes through. I mean, you know, as a kid at the end, like at the end of this kind of at the end of history, really, like, you know what I mean, like like in his mind,
when Francis Fukuyama comes out, it's a weird ending.
No, but like, you know, like at the end of Empire, right, like a kid sitting there and literally the adults are just reduced to kind of just talking about microwaves or whatever else, like, you know, to be sitting there and then everything is tinged in disappointment. Like, it's disappointing that Robin Hood just ends up being literally inspired by like the Duke of Kent, and it's just like, great, ha 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 ha, and takes their loot from them. And you know, it's disappointing that Napoleon is just like this weirdo obsessed with his height, and it's disappointing that even the lovers, there's something wrong with, you know, Michael Palin's lover in both times he appears. You know what I mean? Like, he has these defects, and to kind of be growing up and realize that everything is defected and everything running through this empire is defected, and it's all kind of disappointing and it's all disillusioning, and but still be kind of written in the way that a kid could kind of conceive of it. I mean, I didn't think about it the first time I watched through it last night, but like, yeah, you're right. Like,
well, and if you think about it in terms of like, there's good and evil is really, really obsessed with technology and just thinks it's the neatest.
Yeah.
And throughout, well, more as the movie progresses, Kevin with the bandits is trying to tell them, hey, the money isn't that important. It's the relationships we make along the way. Like, it's actually fairly,
but they're all grown-ups too. So, you know, the kid is trying to say, like, why do you care so much about money? Because kids do not understand why grown-ups get so concerned with money and material possessions in any way. And even like at the end, he's gained all this wisdom, and the way it ends is that even though he's learned so much along this journey, and he can spot evil when he sees it, when he tries to tell a grown-up, they just don't respect him or trust him, and there's nothing that he could do about it. And I just love when he says, don't touch it, and the parents just go
immediately.
Like, immediately. And die.
Yeah.
It's the best ending ever.
And I was hoping I get the chance to weigh in on any one of the 20 topics that you guys discussed before we talked about that. But holy shit, best like crazy ending ever, right?
I
like,
loved it so much.
Where and spoiler alert for a movie that is like, what, 1981?
Yeah,
when does this come out? Like,
about it.
Yeah, like this is like, you even see Sean Connery in this film, Sir appearing in this film. You even see him as the firefighter give him a little hey, and then like, but then drive away. So it's not like, oh, he gets to like go live out with like his buddy Sean Connery in this reincarnated form or whatever. It's just like, no, like parents just died, and it's like, all right, that's the end of the movie, everyone.
By the way, that was essentially an accident, scheduling accident that happened, because the original script called for the giant barrage. Sean Connery was supposed to come and try to save him with all of his, like, you know, soldiers, and that he was going to be one of the people attacking evil. And Sean Connery had a million other things to do and was like, I'm not coming to England anytime soon. Sorry. So they got Sean Connery. I have a clip about it, but they have Sean Connery for an hour, and he was just like, well, what if I was just a firefighter? He came up with that himself and was like, what if I was the fireman that just winked at the end? And they were like, oh shit.
Oh yeah. It was such a subtle and bizarre addition to the parents blowing up ending. Like, as a kid, it was hard to even remember what I was remembering from it. Like, it just felt like a fever dream. And like, did I just see that person there? Was that the same person? Like, as a kid, keeping track of all of that. But also just like, I enjoyed being in the space of Time Bandits when I was little. Even though I couldn't really follow what was happening.
Yeah.
Like, it just really clicked to like my kid brain.
And I'll shut up and let Conan talk after this, I want to say the one tangible thing that he gets out of it is the photographs, right? Which is the one kind of link to technology throughout the movie, is that he kind of has this camera going around with him and he gets to take photographs. And it's like the whole, like I was thinking throughout this, because I mean, there's kind of movie cliches, right? Like you're taking pictures the whole time and it's like, oh, well, maybe you get the pictures back or somebody winks at you. I mean, it's funny that the guy winks at him and then drives away, because what the fuck is that kid going to do now? His parents are dead and it's just like, what you thought about was actually happening. Haha, drives away. But like, you know, the photographs, I think, play into that. Conan, I want to hear from you. You are on the air.
So, is this thing on? Is this thing on?
I gotta say, first time, long time.
First time, long time. Big fan of the show. Take my answer off the air. I love the fact that the original casting for Sean Connery was a Sean Connery type. And then they literally just asked him, and he's like, "Sure, I'll do it."
Well, was Sean Connery or a cheaper, like
it was something like Pound Shop Sean Connery or something along those lines. I don't remember exactly what the derivation of it was, but I like that he's like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And I actually think it adds a lot to the movie. I think there's a few things, like I said, there's a few things I kind of wanted to touch on. Not the least of which is I think it's an incredibly clever writing, that it is written in the style of, as often mentioned here so far, that in the style of how a child would tell a story, playing with the action figures, right? Like, and what else do we have? Oh, we got a boat. But what if it was like, it's really top of someone's head and it's crazy. Like, like the entire way it unfolds. Like, if you think about it in terms of linear storytelling, it doesn't make tons of sense. But the idea of like, oh no, they got this map. This map leads them to the different times where they steal the stuff. And they're like, oh no, the map got lost. Oh, but check it out. Kevin took pictures along the way. And so they can see it in the picture. And it's just like, that's actually pretty clever. Now, all that said, it is stunningly chaotic and almost a victim of its own enthusiasm. A lot of the times that you could have dialed down about 10% of that. It still would have been hilarious and interesting and awesome.
I swear to God, I will burn the negative if you even fucking try to dial it down.
Yeah, I mean, that's...
You want less of Time Bandits, is what I'm hearing?
It's look, they had a vision.
They're already dwarfs. How much less can you really take?
They had a vision.
Can't reach the microphone.
They had a vision for what they wanted to do with this film, even though some of the same themes and similar ideas and concepts and like haunting visuals. Can we just say haunting visuals? Like stuff that like, I love this movie as a kid. I probably couldn't tell you a single thing about it other than the fact that they ran around stealing stuff, you know, and that was like the sum totality of it. But I remember things like the bedroom wall moving and like the night coming over the bed and like the cages hanging in the void, like all that stuff. I remember the game show where it's like a labyrinth to get over to it. All that stuff, all of that stuff I remember so distinctly. I do not remember the plot holes at all. Like that wasn't like what I was concerned with at the time.
When you say plot hole, do you mean time hole? Because that might be the same thing.
But I think that it's notable that all these not all these same ideas, but a lot of these same ideas show up in things like one of my favorite movies of all time, Brazil. They show up, but they're in more articulated forms that are more quote unquote palatable for an adult audience while still maintaining like the crazy visuals, which why I feel that is the best dystopian sci-fi comedy.
I have never been able to stay awake through an entire viewing of Brazil.
You are missing out because as
I own the movie, okay? Like it's not from not trying.
Bolsonaro shows up at the end. It's crazy. I don't know.
It's like
never ever watch because there's the Criterion edition has 3 editions, one of which has the tacked on happy ending for television. Do not ever watch that version.
By the way, Criterion also has Time Bandits, and the sound is just like I had to pay for a rental because the sound is just too low. Like I don't. It wasn't coming up on my.
That's too bad.
Yeah. Criterion, get to it. I know you're watching.
Criterion. Can we get our Criterion channel viewers to get on that shit, please? But
you know what I thought really worked though about the storytelling in the era that it was made is that it was on regular television a fair amount, not regular, but like cable. I don't know. However, we watched TV back in the day when you couldn't see what was on and you just had to flip through the channels, right? for those of you who experience that, if you came across Time Bandits in the channel flip, it didn't matter where you were at in the movie. You could watch the rest of the movie.
Oh yeah, because it's a vibe movie.
Like it was just like, it was also very compartmental. Like,
yeah, you can watch whole sections and be like, oh, that was an awesome movie, and you're like, no, that was like just 10 minutes. They were running around doing that thing over there.
Right. And so like you could pick it up at any point in the movie, watch for as long as you wanted to, and walk away satisfied with whatever you'd seen of Time Bandits, you know?
And they'd be like, oh, I guess we better get to dinner, you know? Okay.
Right.
Oh no, evil.
Yeah.
No, Conan, but I know you only got to half of what you wanted to say there. So I want to give you space. I want to give you some, you know, some time hole to really
some rope to hang yourself with. Oh wait, that's me. That's my job.
Yeah. Okay.
Are you probably encouraging Conan's suicide on camera? Please don't do that. That's not the kind of show that we're.
Oh, this took a dark turn, didn't it?
I mean, for a Gilliam film, even.
So I think that hitting on the just comical, crass commercialism and consumerism of the movie that was really kind of only at the dawn of that yuppie era, and like the jazzercise and like, you know, this machine that will solve every problem you've ever had, like things along those lines. It's so well depicted here because it's depicted in vagaries, like the specifics of what his parents, who could not give a flying fuck about history of any kind, what they're obsessed with.
The history of microwave production.
Yeah. Well, that's why I was driving at. The history doesn't matter to them because they're concerned about what's now, what's cool, and like they're so invested in that they basically are terrible parents. I mean, like it's implied and not outright shown, but it's heavily implied that like this kid leads a pretty lonely life, just sitting there with his history books, being like, "Oh, you know who was cool? Agamemnon. You know who's not cool? My dad. I wish he loved me." You know,
my
like,
fucking dad. Fuck my dad.
What if Agamemnon was my dad? You know, and that goes back to the childlike logic, right? And so you get a little bit of a hint of like sort of like a sad life of someone who like lives mostly in his head, but also happens to be just astoundingly good at like knowing like history that charitably most adults don't know. Let alone like a kid his age, but he's great at it. He knows all of these specifics.
Yeah, but is he doing taxes?
That's
rarely I would know more history if I didn't have to do taxes.
Rarely is it asked, are our children doing taxes?
It's 12 o'clock. Are your children doing taxes?
The difference between that kind of kid in England and that kind of kid in America, once again, is that like that kind of kid in America becomes like a libertarian, like an obsessive libertarian.
Oh, I was that kid. Oh,
not all of them, but I'm just saying like that kind of like
all of them become libertarians.
Like,
got it.
Thinking,
like, give him the hands. Give him the hands.
That kind of kid ends up like cosplaying. That kind of kid ends up cosplaying like the Revolutionary War, and it's just like, don't tread on me. Whereas a kid in, I think in England, as it's a dying empire that's kind of has this long history and this long, even fictional history, kind of with Robin Hood. Like, there's no evidence that Robin Hood like was a real person. Like, kind of, you know, thinks about it in terms of these like romantic.
Forrest, I feel like you're forgetting about the whole of the American South.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry that kid didn't dream about having slaves, but
like,
are you saying that there are Europeans who've never dreamed of having slaves?
Oh no, all Europeans just intrinsically have dreamed about having slaves or owning like a mine in like Africa and doing the Elon Musk.
Agamemnon had slaves.
Yeah,
and that's why he's canceled. Anyway, that's this episode of Movie Night Extravaganza.
That's why Agamemnon was canceled. Send tweet.
Oh, we haven't even got to Sean Connery about beating women.
Oh yeah,
that's like its own thing. Do we have to talk
I'm not
about
gonna let
it?
Sean
Maybe eventually I'll get
Connery
through a
ruin
point and then we
Sean
can switch
Connery
topics
for me.
17.
All right, Conan, continue. I'm sorry. I just
that's my thoughts.
I've been having these the imperialist like kind of thoughts about this movie in my head, and I've wanted to get to certain ones.
Yeah, so I can tell.
I you know,
it's on your mind.
I'm done. I'll mute myself.
But I think that so there's an element of and if there's a theme for movie night Fantasia, right, is that like some of the human characters, there tends to be like the trope, which is something identifiable for a lot of us as the bookish type, the person who lives more in their head than in the outside world for whatever reason. Maybe it's like a Bastion where like literally he gets dumpstered because he likes reading too much and like these kids are dicks. Or, whether it's more of a Kevin who's just his interests don't align with his parents in any way, shape, or form. He doesn't really have an outlet for it, living in this kind of pseudo-suburban hell. I think that it's notable because that makes for an interesting hero. Like what they said what I wanted to reference was in the, when there was the talk after the preview, right? They're talking about like having someone along, like where the protagonists, they weren't, they mentioned the height thing, right? That like, it's like, oh, you got a little kid, but it's like the whole crew of these like toughs on this going around doing these time heists aren't much taller than them, which is such a like Monty Python be like, oh, why don't we just have them be the same height? Then it won't seem so weird they're running around with a kid. It still seems weird, by the way. It is technically child abduction.
Yeah,
but it's low key child abduction.
Like
he wants to
go. Beings.
Yeah, they're basically angels. Like when I tell people about this movie, I say there's this group of angels who like helped in creation and got bored, and so they stole something from God. God is actively trying to hunt them down. Also, there's a kid. And then they just steal stuff from people.
You also forget one of the best things to Forrest like overall critique too, which is that like at one point the God character later on, again spoiler alert for a movie almost as old as I am, the God character is like, oh, we can't have any sitting down on the job, like to the dead character, and like resurrects him, which is just
reminds me of the pandemic and every fucking company being like, well, being dead is no excuse for missing work.
That's no excuse for missing work. Exactly.
You died of COVID. Why are you not here?
Yeah, but I think that was at a time where that was actually a humorous statement and not a
that was considered
commentary on reality.
Humor instead of a literal, like actual reality of like, no, you're expected to still show up. Be like, well I have this pandemic.
Writing, what better God in the machine than God himself?
Well, sure, and I remember I think the second or third time I saw it as a. Not a kid, but as a young man, I was sort of like annoyed, like, why does it have to be God? That's super annoying. Like I was like, in adopting that aspect of things. I think it's great now. Like now it's like, oh, that's hilarious. Cause it's like, that's something that it's easily palpable to the rubes too. I mean, like, let's think about the fact that this is a movie that got like a wide theatrical release.
Was it biggest
super successful?
British film?
No, but
was the biggest British film in the United States until A Fish Called Wanda.
I mean, and you can look at like
film that we should talk about, by the way, eventually.
Yes,
you can.
And you know what? Fierce Creatures isn't bad either. Just it's not as good as Fish Called Wanda.
Let Conan finish the thought.
No,
he's gonna quit the show if we don't let him finish the thought.
I want to talk about A Fish Called Wanda now.
We can tell. The Life of Brian is probably the perfect example.
Yeah,
right. Which is just.
Which throughout this the documentary that I watched on it, they're talking about how George Harrison tried to sell the film to distributors and Dennis, fucking Dennis, dude, fucking whatever Dennis is up to. They tried to sell it as like an updated edition of Life of Brian. They're like, it's nothing like that, but like,
which is absurd on every possible level. But I appreciate the hustle of being like, oh yeah, it's just like the thing that you liked that was very successful.
That was not for kids in any way, shape, or form.
Even a little bit, yeah.
Wait, Biggest Dickus wasn't for kids?
No,
I'm thinking more of the nudity, dude.
Well, like Europeans don't think that way about nudity.
That's true, but like if you're selling,
but also like movies in the early '80s were like, have you watched Clash of the Titans recently?
Yes, actually, I have. Because
yeah, okay.
Let's let Conan finish the last 10% of this.
But the full frontal nudity.
I'm sorry.
Just like 10 minutes. We're never going to get back to where we started.
All y'all are old. Okay. I'm of a different generation, apparently. I just want to put that out there.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. It's like, nudity in children's films.
Oh, I see. All right. I had no idea what you're talking about, but that's fine.
Yeah.
I've heard your show. I'm used to it.
Oh, so you're saying our conversation's a little too highbrow for you?
Exactly.
You're kind of dressed like a pilgrim or something.
I'm going for a witch.
It makes this a lot more. Yeah.
See, I thought
quite
Bruce Bader
puritanical with
Ginsburg.
this one, isn't she?
I was gonna say big Supreme Court energy. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah. Dissenting opinion. Girl boss.
Notorious RGB.
every time a bunch of dead people, like everyone's kind of like, like Betty White and like I always imagine that someone's gonna be like, you know what, they're hanging out with RBG right now in heaven. They're all having, because when she died,
They're
it was
jamming with
time
Tupac up in heaven. Kurt Cobain and Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She plays the nose flute.
And Michael Brooks.
Okay.
And Michael Brooks and
Betty
Ruth
White
Bader Ginsburg
hanging
are
out.
not hanging out. Anyway, Conan, let me hear.
Oh, just like the movie, I lost the thread, so it's fine. I just think it's amazing that like all these ideas are packed into this film. Again, a few of which we could arguably take or leave, but it adds to the dreamlike quality of it, going from like vignette to vignette, scene to scene, which which some people thought that was poor writing. That was their idea. That was literally like the idea. And again, like, they mentioned like the whole thing of like having these different things like strung together. Well, it's very successful as far as that goes. Now, could have been done a little better? Yeah, probably. But it's still like, it's a very watchable, weird movie. And I think there's a special category for movies for that, first of all, it's astounding this has a Criterion Collection release, but that's because it's Terry Gilliam, right? But like,
well, I think it's because of Brazil also. I mean,
and Brazil earns it. And again, one of my favorite movies of all time, so I'm a little bit biased to it. But some of the ideas that are presented here are built upon and made into very stunning, sardonic critiques within Brazil. And it kind of went two directions with Gilliam. Like it kind of went more towards like, okay, this is the last one that's like, okay, this is serious, but also comedy. Is more like, well, this is a serious drama that has funny moments, to like, no, this is basically a comedy that you're like, oh, they have a point. Like, and it kind of split off like that. Whereas this one of the last movies where it does kind of both simultaneously. And one of the reasons why is it works a lot and doesn't work all the time. And as for the greater audience, I'm not talking about people that are fans of the film. Course, we all get it. We stand for the individual dwarves. They're fantastic. They're great. We love it, folks. We love them more and more.
Would have approved.
We love those little guys.
I said you guys the Peter Dinklage coming out against Snow White, the new Disney remake.
Was that serious?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, he was on Marin and said this. And then Disney had a response, which I haven't read yet.
I mean, sometimes I'm just not like maybe aware of something that's.
Sometimes it's okay not to be in the internet, I think, is.
But like, they were supposed to be magical creatures. They were like fairies.
Also problematic.
Yeah, well,
okay.
I'm a fairy. I'm a fairy to you.
It's like the magical Negro or the magical Native American or whatever,
But is it though?
No, I mean, I don't think that necessarily I'm sorry I brought this up. I just thought it was interesting that we're talking about this movie today.
No, I think because I was thinking the same thing. Like, depictions of people with physical differences are sometimes pretty poor, and it was really kind of hard to tell whether they were in this movie or not.
Yeah, this movie kind of threads that line, and I think
they were having fun.
Yeah, I don't think anybody. I don't think any of them thought they were being exploited. They were like, "Cool, we get paid work with a cool director, and like, get to like do
and
cool
really
shit."
neat roles."
Yeah.
And this led to the main dwarf, whose actor his name is escaping me, who sadly committed suicide, unfortunately.
In the movie, his name is Randall, and I tried to figure out his name the entire movie, and then later on, he's like Randall, and I was like, oh, I guess it's Randall.
Yeah, no, he had a TV show a few years later called The Wizard, where he's basically playing Elon Musk meets James Bond.
Yeah, The Wizard. I remember that.
And it was great. And like that's the kind of roles that Peter Dinklage is saying that they should have. Is he wants to play basically like a swashbuckling romantic lead.
David Rappaport, right? That's the
yes, yeah, and he was fantastic.
And you know,
All right, Pekin.
Peter Dinklage in Game of Thrones, like that was a really interesting role. I feel like Time Bandits, that's a really interesting role too. But also, Snow White is a classic fairy story, and the dwarves were never really, to me, an indication that they were people with dwarfism. It was that this was a magical species.
Yeah, there's some manner of fantastical creature that
Right.
have something to do with well, they don't even say like, you know, he's like, you mean God? And like, you know, there's that great exchange where it's like, no, not really. But like it's
like, I don't know
implied,
him that well. Like, I don't know if he's like, you know.
yeah, like we don't really, but it's implied that there's
Right.
something lost. It's implied that there's something lost in translation. That like
Right.
all of these biblical myths are like, oh no, it's actually these little folks that are right around and they really like to steal. Like like that was left out of these chronicles.
Well, they're kind of they're angels. Like they're what we would consider angels. Like they work for God, or they work for kind of the supreme being, which I do like as a title kind of for it. And they're the ones that kind of create everything in the universe. And God is just kind of the manager of the universe. Like he's or the supreme being is just
He's
kind
the
of
PMC of deities, really.
Don't say that 3 times. Catherine Little will pop up and and tell us why Don't Look Up sucks. But you know, so I think that it's interesting that they kind of are angels, right? And then it's another disillusioning thing that the angels in this movie are not angelic in any way, shape, or form, and they're kind of just bored, and God is not godly, you know, he's not pure good. He's kind of the manager of a large firm. Like that's what it feels like when he finally walks out. But bringing up God, this is the God clip that I found in this documentary where they're talking about that role.
There were sort of various philosophical levels which you could take it on with God at the end and all that, I suppose. But
I think
even God, the great thing is you grapple with how do you do God? So you get Ralph Richardson, who's pretty much near God in the acting profession. Where he didn't do any of the lines that I'd written, did he?
Yes, he did.
Did he?
No, he and I. There was a couple things. He got obsessed about the figure of evil there, the charcoal fried figure of evil, because it was something about the pig eating human flesh, Og the pig. And when we arrived on the set that day, there was the statue of David. He said, no. And I said, I don't know what he's talking about. And the reason he decided that they had to turn Og back into human form from pig form is because Og was going to eat a piece of flesh, which in fact was charcoaled evil. And so he wanted bits of evil lying around. So we then had to break up evil, leaving this. And he wanted a shot of Og as a pig with the hand of evil in his mouth. And that's why he was changing it. Well, I agreed to do whatever. So we broke up the statue, but we never did the shot of the pig with the hand. And so it goes all through, but it solved the problem again that day. I mean, movie making is all about just solving the problems, the quotidian problems, it seems to me.
But he was a great God, and he was a God. Again, I liked all the characters. They're really basically some very modern characters, most of them. They're all the same sort of obsessions and hang-ups. And he was a very sort of prissy sort of bank manager type.
Headmaster, I always
Headmaster,
thought.
That's right, yes.
Who
posted
this page?
Yes, right, yes.
Kids left kids around the place.
Yeah.
No, he was magnificent, and I think, and I love the fact that we actually do this philosophical scene at the end of this movie.
Yeah.
You know, why do we have to have evil?
Yeah.
Questions like that are actually asked, which are not normally asked in films, especially kids' films. And it's wonderful, and that was the moment I was really pleased with, because I had him walk behind the pillar when the kid asked the question.
Yes,
and rather just I said, just walk out behind the camera just stays there, and he goes. And then he comes back, and then I think it's something to do with free will.
Yeah, that's right. Something to do with free will.
Magnificent
nice lines like that. And also evil. I mean, David Warner was quite a showman, really, and really liked all things evil could do. And all these zapping things. Which is quite out of control most of the time.
But I loved his obsession with all the things that God had gotten wrong.
Yeah.
And his belief in technology is the answer to everything. Like, it's a simple character. It's just very funny.
Yeah.
And and yet he's threatening at the same time. And I just think the balance between the threat and the comedy was one of the things I'm really pleased with in the film. You always felt there was danger, but not too much. And And these were smart people. Even the dumb ones were smart. It always struck me in the film.
But with some mystical sort of, metaphysical issues on a very banal level.
First started showing it here.
I'm really glad that you played that, Forrest, because I forgot that I really wanted to talk about his, again, I'm talking about like the main character of the main conceit of the entire thing is that, like, hey, there's all this evil doing going on, right? And he's really into technology. And that's incredibly prescient, because even what he's talking about, even though he's not getting like super specific about stuff, that all still holds true, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's all sort of like he's really like, hey, it's basically one line away from being like, oh, that dude just predicted the next 30 years.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, like,
and that guy won.
Their cell phones.
Yeah.
These kids with their printing presses. These
And
kids
then how
with the
they're
wheels.
Like how everything is used basically for these nefarious purposes to make
she's a girl of a different generation. What can we say?
That's
I'm a pilgrim, apparently.
Somehow
I'm
both at
a
once.
pilgrim on this one.
Well, I think the movie is less about technology and more about consumerism, right?
Yeah.
Like
it's Sensei is about technology. I said he's into technology. There's a distinct notable
But like,
difference.
Which the parents are too.
Yeah.
It would be easy to connect all technology as being bad because bad is or evil or whatever is.
Yeah, I don't think that's that's what they're doing. I don't
that's
think
not what the movie's doing at all.
No.
Like, objectively, right? So we can agree on that. So that's good.
but there is, I mean, the parents are really into technology, so when they actually touch the evil, it's like in the same way they're kind of having this obsessive impulse to just be like, whatever the next thing is, let's buy it. They're literally living that out by touching the evil that's like super into computers.
The technology is not evil, but it's corrupting them.
The banality of evil.
Well,
and it's the banal evil that we all deal with all the time, where it's not even as explicit as like, hey, there's a big dude throwing fireballs, or there is a big dude throwing fireballs at the end, kind of thing. But like the fact that the evil is coming, from us, like it's bringing out our worst nature. So, and it does so in a way that doesn't really bop you over head with it. But I think if you watch it now, oh my God, it's like, it's incredibly explicit. It's like, oh, that's cool that this dude basically, invented Twitter. Right on.
Well, and I thought too when I was watching it, and this was something that I definitely would not have picked up on as a kid. But to me, I was also seeing as specifically British, but the rest of the world too. But the kind of
I think that was that's what the slogan that the British Empire used. Specifically British, but the rest of the world too.
But the rest of the world too. It's like 12-point type underneath the 24-point type. Yeah.
Anyway, the like in Britain in the early 80s, the kind of like post-punk new wave, like Rage Against Suburbia. Like I could have seen an XTC song going on during like the scenes there. Like I was like in my head, I was thinking of like Respectable Street.
I think I said Making Plans for Nigel, but that's probably better. Yeah.
Yeah, I was playing like Respectable Street and like just kind of the like British rage against suburbia played out in film in a way that you don't see quite as much. And like I just really couldn't even like disconnect those two things. But for them to be simultaneous in time, like just a general rage against British suburbia was happening in the early 80s.
Yeah, it was very much like Brixton, which was a bedroom community where Depeche Mode grew up from, which is weird because they didn't rage against the suburbs like a lot of the two-tone label people certainly did.
Well, when you don't have class analysis, like it kind of comes down to kind of raging against like the suburbs as a concept. When you don't have class analysis, it kind of comes raging against appliances sometimes as a concept. I think this movie did have like a class analysis to it, and I think that Monty Python throughout its entire tenure kind of had an interesting take on a lot of the absurdity of like actually existing socialism as it actually kind of played out. Like they have the whole game show where it's like different Marxist figures kind of like that's like a great sketch. But like it kind of feels like that 80s punk scene a lot of times, like there ended up being kind of a rage against, I mean, as we talked about with Sid and Nancy, the Labor Party kind of falling through, right? Like throughout the entire like Alex Cox purposely put like labor is failing, like all this stuff behind it. It led to the rise of Thatcher, but it's a local politics that doesn't necessarily reflect like a real class dynamic or a real class analysis of what's actually going on behind the scenes. You're just kind of anarchist raging against the fact that there is a machine to rage against.
But I think the difference between punk and the suburban rage that came later in like post-punk and new wave is the difference between blue collar rage that was really like bringing attention to the class consciousness, and like the really like the most affected people were kind of on the front lines of that, like people who were from factory towns and stuff like that. By the time you get to the early 80s and you're starting to see new wave, you're starting to see more of the lower rung white collar communities raging against the social constructs that they're seeing. And they're very different backgrounds, but like if they can all come together, like it's one of those things, like you're seeing rage from two different groups and everyone can see the similarities, but maybe they're not coming together very well. And that's like been the problem of the left this whole time. Rant over.
Well, let me just say that Blender in the Name of is definitely my favorite Rage Against the Appliances song. But I think that this movie shows the dawn of modern commercialism. And again, what became known as yuppie-like behavior, but does so in a way that's already ripping it apart when it's still being born.
Right.
Which is fantastic because it shows that these guys, as much as the Monty Python crew, they get retroactively put against modern morality for humor that was basically well over 40 plus odd years ago. I think they were incredibly astute in pointing out problems and just mercilessly mocking it in a way that like still holds true to this day, which is astounding.
I mean, to me, a surprising amount of Monty Python does hold up to today's standards.
I agree.
And it's actually surprising that so much of it does. Nobody.
Well, it's one of the reasons why it endures. Right? It's one of the reasons why John Cleese is almost in like an Iggy Pop sort of role, that he just almost can't quite tarnish his image completely, even though he's trying. He's really trying. He's trying so hard. Like someone needs to take his freaking phone away, or his computer, or both.
Cancel culture is really tearing us apart. No, but like I think England comes to this awareness of kind of this neoliberal turn, right? Like this, what we can all kind of just call that, like with Thatcher kind of taking over and kind of being, England's Reagan, in a very different way. Obviously, she's not like movie star quality anything. She's kind of just the first time they've ever really had, like a quote unquote like working class. His class obviously is a social dynamic a lot of times. Within
79 is when Thatcher comes in as prime minister, by the way.
Yeah,
that's actually I made a note to check that out, but I decided to make a Rage Against the Machine joke instead. So there you go.
I actually did look it up just now, but yeah, so it's like a year, but it's like a year earlier, but they've kind of had labor for a long time before Thatcher takes over, and Harold Wilson as the prime minister is kind of like openly calls himself a socialist, and it kind of comes to it from like, oh well, we're gonna kind of empower the working classes in Britain, not the other fucking colonies, which is the same thing that's happening at the same time with Mitterrand in France, where it's like, listen, we're gonna still have imperialism as it dies out. Like it's sputtering, but imperialism is still gonna exist. We can still kind of extract everything from these other countries, but we're gonna have in England itself, like, an empowering of the working classes that fails. And we talked about this extensively in our Sid and Nancy episode a long time ago.
So
you were muted.
I was just saying, I remember.
And you were there. It was 30 plus years ago.
Still going on.
But we had that conversation, right? Like it kind of, the Labor Party won't save you signs in Sid and Nancy. Like the fact that really, like, as kind of the Sex Pistols and like all of these different kind of UK bands that like are promoting anarchy, but not like anarchy as in just a non-political, let's throw things around. Even as they're claiming kind of, oh, we're against fascism, there's no explicit definition of what fascism is.
Yeah, they kind of actually tarnished the word anarchy in reality. I mean, they made it look really cool, but they also confused what that like.
That was the last time the anarchy ever looked really cool.
They did make it look really cool, though.
I don't know.
I'm sorry, I'm a sucker for a guy with a mohawk. Okay,
I thought Anarchy in Greece looked pretty cool.
I liked the Anarchy in Bedrock.
Yeah,
that was a great song. I'm sorry, I absolutely love Katherine Helmond. And like you know, I watched Who's the Boss mostly for Katherine Helmond as a kid, because like I just loved her coming in there and just stealing every single scene.
Yeah, she's objectively the best spotter.
Brazil, she's amazing. She had a pilot with Elvira.
She was in Soap, wasn't she?
Yes,
yes.
She was like the main person.
Yeah, she's the shining star of the shining star cast.
Yeah, and then like she had a pilot with Elvira, which sounded amazing, but CBS kind of buried, so we never got to see it.
Huh.
Could have been the Cagney and Lacey.
Yeah, it was her and Elvira, you know, pretending that they're not witches. What more do you need?
When we had written sketches in Python, large chunks, and you couldn't get from A to B, Terry would very often be deputed to do an animation, and they'd be very ingenious and it'd get you through. And it happened with that. I just felt at certain points I could write the bulk of, say, a Napoleon scene or the ogre scene or whatever. But in order to get from one to the other, Terry would do these wonderful falls through space and through the walls and all that, which was great stuff. I mean, that was just so technically so good. And so it enabled us to move on quite quickly and get away from things whenever we wanted to. And I think generally speaking, we did. I always felt at the end it got slightly more. The scene with the ogre on board ship was quite a longish scene.
Yeah.
And up to then, everything had gone just about the right pace moving through. And it slows up a little there because I think it's just on board ship and
there's not much action at that point. It's actually shorter than what we actually wrote. We kept trimming that one down, and there's a certain point you can't go below, and it's you're probably right. It's not perfect, Mike. It's not a
no. It's visually perfect.
But if I could just
it's my writing.
Yeah,
my writing
something
on and on. I just know when to stop. And
somebody who only recently bumped into me said, and I mentioned Time Bandits. He said, "God, that film kicks ass." This is a wonderful way to describe that kind of film.
Yeah,
the boat think that these things the right way around. The giant wears a hat that looks like a boat, and it's full of boaty things inside.
What was the thinking there? Was it a boat going along and then, oh, what a great idea if it's actually someone on someone's head?
It's even simpler.
Or was it?
Brian Froud, you know Brian Froud has done books on Pixies and all that. Fantastic. There's a book he did once on Pixies or Giants or something, and there's a character in there in the water with a boat on his head, and I stole it from it.
That's a confession.
It's as simple as that, folks. We did say out of that business that what you do in the past is going to affect the future. We just avoided getting into that because we just kept plummeting further into the past and then made the sidestep leap into the land of legends. So right out of that one. I think the problem with a lot of films with time travel, they're slightly more pretentious. They think they've got to say more important things. Where we're free from that. They just ride it and go and not get caught up in the thing. You can do it in a book. You've got the time and the complexity in a book, but films just want to get on with it. It seems to me, and it's
indeed. I was just thinking that
he said the thing. Get on with it.
My favorite part is when he said the thing, then it went to the middle part, and then it was over. That was my favorite.
That's what she said.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The middle thing, the thing of all things. Yeah, so I think it's interesting that they're talking about pacing there, though, right? Like you don't hear that very often when it comes to I mean, you hear that when it comes to writers, but not necessarily when it comes to like full-fledged films.
And coitus as well, but yes, pacing.
Yeah.
They
called it back in your day, coitus.
Coitus, yes, as we called it back in the day when I was a child in the 1800s. I think that they're comedians. ultimately. Like Gilliam was, comedy adjacent, maybe, much like myself.
Well, I mean, he was doing comics, like he was doing humorous comics.
But pacing is everything in comedy, also in hosting.
And in podcasts.
So, but the idea of pacing being so important to them, of course, it's gonna be important. That's how they think in terms of like, why is it funnier if there's like a 1 second gap versus like a half second gap? It just is. You just intrinsically know it, and it's all over the script and in all the action on screen. Even people that are not brought in to be funny, everyone gets to be a Margaret Dumont in some cases.
Who's that?
Who? Yeah.
I'm too young for that one.
The Marx Brothers, before any of our time put together, but she is the ultimate. She's brilliant because she's
the older lady that was in all of the Marx Brothers.
She's not an older lady. She was the same age, but she played the straight person so that like Groucho and whoever else could just bounce. And like if she wasn't there, this is a skill. Look, can you just not right now? Like it's a skill to be a good straight person, and it is part of comedy. So if you ever see someone and they're a comedian, they're not funny, you can just say you'd be a fantastic straight person, because it's not really an insult, but it's probably true. But the thing is, it's important in comedy to have like if you have this like volatile universe going around you.
No,
someone has to be the one that's
like,
huh? What do you mean? Like the straight face kind of person.
But yeah, no, Tim Meadows on Saturday Night Live was always playing that and was brilliant at it. And so like, it's nice to see that they are able to kind of pull that off by getting some brilliant actors who aren't known for being funny, like Ian Holm, who was the killer robot in Alien.
Oh, was he really? Oh yeah, yes he was.
Yeah. You forgot about that, didn't you?
That's some December shit, man.
That was like a year ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was 100,000 years ago, bro.
I really loved both of the ogres though. Because I really liked the over the top like human concerns given to monsters.
Yeah.
Like
they have a life.
They were a very loving couple.
Yeah.
You really liked them. Had they not been trying to eat the people you were following the entire time, you
one tiny little flaw.
For them. Now the one that's the nature of being an ogre, though. Yeah, like
that's why we love Catherine Hellman.
Oh, she was wonderful.
They never once told anybody to get out of my swamp, though. So I couldn't follow it personally. No, but
was
it
that
is
a Shrek reference.
Yes.
Yeah, it was.
Donkey. Yeah, number 2.
But no, I liked also the way that they tricked the ogre, right? Who is not by nature a terrifying person. Like he's kind of a failure as an ogre, as we think of them. Is that his back is obviously constantly in peril. And
which is hilarious. An ogre who has a bad back? That's fucking amazing. Are you kidding me?
and
it's almost reminiscent of like an Aesop's fable with the
lion with the thorn in his paw,
and the mouse comes up and removes.
Yeah,
him. I mean,
which keeps it in line with like kid stories, kid thoughts. It's just like.
AKA the only kind of culture you need to understand. Yes.
Anything that we are digging into, like that you can find a really good storytelling reason that it's there. Even though as a whole, it might look a little disjointed. Like it seems very actually well worked in its absurdity. And I love criticizing movies, and I have very little negative to say about this one.
I think it's also pointing out, though, that like being terrifying is kind of an aesthetic, right? Like being terrifying is really about what you look like and whether you can scare people into staying in the pot. So it kind of fully. You're checking your watch there. You're trying to see when we're getting off.
I have not. I have a kid here who has to go to bed.
All right. Well, after the thought, we'll go to the letterbox one-liners. But kind of
it's our signature bit.
But it kind of is. It's an aestheticization of being terrifying, like the idea of an ogre. Like they might be terrifying in form, they might be terrifying in the actual things that they do, but it totally demeans and undermines it. You know, when you find out like, oh well, his back hurts, his body's like kind of falling apart. So like all of a sudden the thing that really scares you as a kid is completely gone and neutralized because, you know, the physical defects of the, you know, the monster itself.
And sympathy. It gets you sympathy for it too. And then you're like, oh right, these are fucking ogres and they're here, they're gonna eat these people, right?
Right.
Like I forgot for a minute because it's like, oh, you get into their like domestic situation. Oh, I'm not able to sleep for longer than an hour, you know, like whatever. Like it's such a nice little tableau. And it's one of the things this movie does really well.
Yeah,
it does.
Anyway.
All right, well, Conan, letterbox one-liners, the signature bit.
That's right. This is the signature bit. Okay, I'm gonna keep saying it until it becomes true. So there is a site called Letterboxd. It is a place for film. It is a social media network that is not terrible and destructive to the world at large. It's a place for film fans to talk with and to each other about the movies they love or don't love. It's a bottom-up democracy. No lords, no masters. We've got a lot of different people that are on there. They get to give their opinions on films. Sometimes it's pithy, sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's thoughtful. And the ones that are liked the best by myself, Conan, Ogre Back Pain Neutron, I pull for this show, Movie Night Extravaganza, so that we can read and react to them. So here we go. Philosophy, religion, and politics for kids age 6 and up.
Oh, come on. I was 4 when I first watched this movie.
God damn it, Andy.
Erasing the 4-year-olds.
I absolutely fucking love that the film ends with Kevin's parents getting blown up after touching a piece of evil.
Yes. Yes.
That's Linda, the depressed film snob, and I must agree, Linda. I think it's a fantastic
moment. Depressed because of her parents. They fucking sucked.
5 stars too.
Extra half star goes to the pig head.
Yes.
Matt the Snapper in that one.
Multiple pig heads in that one.
There's a surprising amount of pig heads in this film.
Including the parents, am I right, folks?
I would have started with lasers. 8 o'clock, day 1.
Yes.
That's Brian Tolerico with the great libertarian anthem. Listen, what the hell is going on here?
but she still liked it.
Like 2.5 stars liked it. Yeah, again, that's the appeal of this movie. And if you have no idea what is happening, it's still a worthwhile watch, which is impressive.
Yeah.
So many haters on this movie. Do they even know what it's like to have fun? Probably too busy with their evil ass computer chips and kitchen gadgets.
And their
Rage against the appliance.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Louis Jean Antoine Depardieu.
I'm inspired to go over to AT&T right now and start hitting it with a stick, but you know, the entire store and just breaking everything.
Yeah,
fucking evil ass computer chips and kitchen gadgets. I'm over it.
Take that, chick who's the AT&T spokesperson. Every time I start a Terry Gilliam movie, I should watch more Terry Gilliam. Then by the end, maybe that's enough Terry Gilliam for a while. That's Jordan Sellers with probably one of the ones that made me laugh the most, frankly.
That was good.
Yeah, it was a good review.
Blimey, this Terry Gilliam bloke bloody mental, isn't it?
It's because he's American. It's because he's the one Monty Python person born in America. That's why he's so bloody mental.
A thorough exploration of shit breaking through walls. And can we stay on this one for a minute too to note the tags for
Corona time?
Bechdel fail. Agreed.
Yeah.
Food. It's Corona time. That can go a couple ways. Previously on watch list and with Leo.
Wait, is Leo their cat or something?
I don't know.
Who knows? But it's their tag.
But it is a thorough exploration of shit breaking through walls. We barely talked about it. People are talking about it more and more.
There's a lot of good wall work in this movie.
There is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I actually do really like the idea that like you can kind of write the scene. You can kind of write yourself out of the scene by just being like, all right, drop through a portal now.
Yeah, just like, and how are we going to end this? How do you think we're going to end this?
I don't know if I played the clip of Terry Gilliam and Michael Palin talking about this, but they're talking about how it's Python-esque because they could just write themselves out of a scene by just doing a portal.
Gets turned into a dog and then dies. Charlotte Levitt with the harsh truth there. That was, I found that more compelling than I think I had before this most recent watch. That like I was like, oh, he's got kind of like this ideation that he wants to be killed by evil, but he gets turned into a dog instead. But then he gets killed. So is that like a bittersweet for him?
Yeah, I think it's.
I'm not king shaming. I'm not king shaming, but it's always a fun time when the gang gets together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Goddamn
Except
right. It is.
when it's an hour and 28 minutes in. No, that's actually short for us.
It is short for y'all, yeah.
Remember the good old days when children's movies were mildly traumatic?
This one was not at all traumatic for me.
No.
I saw this one in my early teens. It was a sick day. I was
yesterday.
Home. No, although that is closer to my end of the scale.
You know, final thoughts on this movie.
I almost have like superlative love for this movie, and that is not what I'm typically accustomed to talking about in like movie reviews, because I want to like knock some people down a notch, and this is just right off the rails.
But you like it. This one, you
love
like.
it. I love it. You've broken us.
Apparently. All right. So, hey, so I think this is like to call this a delightful romp would be the wrong way to describe this very strange movie, right? But the ideas and the high imagination that happens here, not high budget, but high imagination.
High something.
Yes, thank you for getting the easiest joke possible and interrupting me second sentence in to do so. The visuals, we barely talked about them. Like but they're so good. The visuals with almost no budget whatsoever. They made iconic visuals that, like, if you see this as a kid, it'll stick with you. Like, I remembered nothing about the plot. Nothing. Other than they were running around through time. They're doing something in time, I guess. Who knows? And when I watched it like later on, I was like, wow, that's still pretty cool looking. Mm-hmm. And they did it with like not a lot of money. It was high ideas, I'm sure. I said high way too many times. And it's a time heist, right? There's they more or less kidnap a young boy, which is a recipe for comedic success, as we all know. It's
kind of this whole season.
There's a lot of kidnapping in these fantasy. Yeah. It's also muddled uneven. It spends, I think, too much time not knowing its purpose. So all that said, there's a dreamlike logic. There's haunting visuals to it. There are scenes and vignettes that if you sit with them and you're willing to like put the time into them, it's really good. So as a movie, it's like mid-grade Gilliam, right? And I say that as like, look, this is a guy that made one of the greatest comedies of all time, Holy Grail. And then also made like one of the greatest dystopian sci-fis of all time with Brazil. So when I say mid-grade Gilliam, that's actually pretty high praise. Low-grade Gilliam, less so. And is it the most bummer ending of all time? Yeah, fucking probably. And it's amazing.
No,
it's amazing. It's like
I rooted for the parents to blow up. I'm not gonna lie. I fucking hated them.
And there was a point way earlier on that I think was made that was that like. The parents like disrespect this kid so much that they're like, hey, don't touch that. That's concentrated evil, you know? And then they're like immediately touches.
Well,
my own parents got way too excited about getting a good microwave. Like literally they did. And they wanted a replacement for their oven. So
this kid was willing to poop in a hole in the ground for the rest of his life to stay with the gladiator. Like
Agamemnon, he seemed like a cool, chill hang. You know,
100% over his bio parents. Just saying.
Yeah, just sit there and like, hey, who's entertaining us today? All right, cool, right on. That sounds good. You know, maybe it's some palace intrigue, but who knows?
Yeah.
But ultimately, last thing I'd like to say about this film was an incredibly watchable film. And there's something to be said for the watchable films, not just the high art, not just, you know, the proletariat bait, but a watchable film that like does enough and like makes you think, kind of accesses your dreams in this mundane, terrible environment that we live in. Everything is horrible every day. And an escape is not a bad thing. But also, I just want to close with saying, Dead, no excuse for laying off work.
Wow.
All
Oh,
right.
you had that ready. Oh.
All right.
Do you want to
Amanda,
pass? Andy will probably.
Do you have thoughts? Do you have thoughts to add to this?
Okay. So this movie, I want to rib Forrest a little bit by saying this movie was a good movie in that it could be viewed and experienced by watching it. Like he said with The Room. But actually, I think this is a very fun and thoughtful and well put together movie that stands up even for those of us who were born in this century. So
were you though? Were you born in this century?
Even for those of us who were born in the most recent century that has passed.
The last century, you mean?
I said it in a highbrow way, though.
Oh,
yeah. I think it's a good movie. I liked it.
I think everybody on the show was born in the last century past.
Well, except for Conan, who we've established is from the 1800s.
1800s, exactly. Yeah, I'm an old soul.
He recognizes this era of fashion.
Yeah. Have you heard these new young up and comers, the Marx Brothers? Oh yeah, they're quite new.
Exactly.
They're in the talkies. Have you heard of this, Forrest?
I adore Time Bandits. This is one of those movies like Legend, which whenever I'm making art, sometimes I'll just put on to have on the background. And like, you know, I always find something inspirational, something funny, something humorous, something to some kind of idea that's almost there floating around, and I'll make a connection watching it. But also, you know, just that the amazing thing about this as a film, you have such a great cast. I know I went on and on about Catherine Hellman, did not talk about Ralph Richardson as God. Ralph Richardson is fucking amazing. You know, he did this and Dragon Slayer in the same year, which are two phenomenal movies where he basically steals every single scene he's in both of those. So if you've not seen them, Dragon Slayer is a Disney-made George Lucas special effects film that still holds up today visually, but not as fun as Time Bandits is, because Time Bandits has this certain magic that the Python guys kind of bring to it. And I you know, when Conan's talking about this being like, you know, mid-tier Gilliam, like a lot of the low-tier stuff is after like the Python guys kind of stopped working with him. Not that they're still friends and they still watch the stuff. I know, you know, Michael Palin is always like promoting Gilliam's movies as they're coming out, but he's not often in them. But that's okay. You know, they're on to work with new people, and that's fine too.
Happen to this podcast after tonight.
Yes, we're gonna have a whole new cast next episode. Please listen to my reverse vaudeville show that's coming out next week. It's all vaudevillian acts, but you see the ending first. It's quite the treat. Yeah. I was on Ralph Richardson. I didn't even mention, you know, of course, you know, Sean Connery was wonderful. John Cleese is Robin Hood, which the brilliance of John Cleese is how tall he is compared to how short everybody else is.
Andy, there's a doggo.
There's a dog. I lose. But yes, who cares what I'm saying? There's a dog. Dogs win, especially that one.
And that's the final thoughts.
Is that the dog from those memes?
Yeah,
it is
one of them, but most.
Yeah, it's not the biggest guest we've had on this show.
Well, my
it's
final.
not him personally.
Wait, Andy, were you actually done? I know I bust chops here a lot.
More or less. Honestly, I kind of lost my thread. So,
welcome to my life. Yeah,
I'm going to end up editing this tonight, but
that's the episode.
My final thoughts are. But before they collect their prize, let's have a look at what made it possible for them to be with us here tonight. The map, please.